is a lot of fun. And one of the things I'd like to do today, over the next period of time, maybe 40 minutes or so, is talk a bit about what it's like to be an entrepreneur. In particular, there's a lot written on what it takes to be an entrepreneur. There's a fair amount of research that addresses the key success factors in being an entrepreneur. I want to rather today spend some time on the less academic aspects of entrepreneurship and focus in on the kinds and types of decisions that are necessary to effect a successful career in entrepreneurship and address and provide the lifestyle that many of you that are considering entrepreneurship are seeking. Okay. So some of the things that I'd like to touch on is how we navigate and address some of the key decision points along the process of developing a entrepreneurial pathway. So today, I'd like to address a few things as they touch on why one bothers to become an entrepreneur. And when you answer that question yourselves, boy, it sure would be nice, to have a lot of money or have a lot of independence or have some of the various things that you envy in entrepreneurs. I'd like to focus in on some of the nuances in the real-life scenario so that you can have time and opportunity to reflect on your own perspective or your own situation and see whether or not it makes sense, either now or at some future date in your metamorphosis and educational process. So we're going to touch on motivations. What are the things that from the gut level need to be in place and make sense as appropriate motivations for being an entrepreneur? Okay. Sorry. I believe we've addressed a small technical difficulty. Onward and forward. Getting started is another area of key or concern to young, budding entrepreneurs. What are the ways in which entrepreneurs get off the dime and get going? Then we'll spend some time on decisions. In other words, should I do a service? Should I consider a product? What are the various advantages and disadvantages of seeking a small environment for my new business enterprise? Or from the get-go, establish some goals and objectives that are in fact related to having eventually a large business and the pros and cons of each. And then the whole concept of control, which is, in my opinion, after a quarter of a century of doing entrepreneurship, is probably one of the most important criteria or decision that is within your power and needs to be adjudicated properly to be consistent with your goals and objectives. Then I'd like to spend some time on the ingredients for success, some of which may be not quite the ones you might find in books. And then spend time on the concept of how to keep score. And I'm not suggesting that you keep score in any way, shape, or form the same way that I do, but I'd like to provide maybe a structure upon which you can lay your own criteria. Okay. Just a little bit of background. I'm currently president of Prometrics in King of Prussia. We have offices not too far from the mall in King of Prussia, which makes it real convenient to meet people. We just tell them, come out, do some shopping, and swing by the office. As well as in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is beach territory. I started Prometrics approximately 16 years ago. And in that time, we've done a little bit over 6,000 projects for pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies. What we do in a nutshell is collect data, primarily related to pharmacy transactions, in other words, prescription information. We integrate that data because we're collecting it from many, many different sources from around the country, collecting on average over 100 million scripts on a monthly basis sometimes are available. Then we, once integrated, we're able to analyze that data using sometimes fairly standard descriptive statistics found in the packages like SPSS or Excel, and then doing some data mining using some sophisticated software, but with the eventual goal of finding trends, information, and direction, which we then report to our pharmaceutical marketing and sales clients, usually executives, that are seeking to bring change within their organization to higher ground and meeting goals and objectives, particularly around and surrounding launch of products. Okay. Also, about 6 months ago, with some colleagues, acquired a gym, a 20,000 square foot gym in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, formerly known as Gold's Gym. We purchased the franchise, and as I'll mention a little bit later on in the talk, immediately, based on our perspective and understanding of the opportunity, switched the franchise, said goodbye to the Gold's name, and started something called Forge Academy of Strength Training, also known as FAST, F-A-S-T for short. Okay. I'm also on the board of directors of International Health in Philadelphia, which is a residence and arts facility housing 440 people, students and fellows and intellectuals from around the world, over 100 countries at any one point in time. I also sit on the board of directors of a number of companies. I've noticed here, or noted here, Innovative Health Services, a company that we formed a number of years ago and incubated, and then launched, and is still a vibrant small firm serving the claims processing industry. In other words, when you go to a doctor, you have a transaction, that claim has to get adjudicated, and Innovative Health Services uses modern, new XML-based, HIPAA-compliant technology to bring that transaction for rapid payment, to assist in the rapid payment for physicians. I've been an angel investor for a number of years, I guess maybe a little over a decade, and invested in approximately 16 companies. And I'm happy to tell you that the majority of those companies have not been successful. And so my batting average is somewhere around Ryan Howard's batting average. Always room for improvement. The key thing, though, is if you hit some home runs, it really makes up for all the ones that don't work out so well. Because it turns out entrepreneurs are remembered for their success, not so much for their failures. One of the things I enjoy these days, and later on in keeping score at the end of this presentation, I'll talk about what things one does at times when you have success to balance off your life and your career. I'm currently, and have been for the last almost 4 years or so, adjunct professor here at Westchester University. I teach strategic marketing in the MBA department at school. I also teach marketing management to the undergraduate student body, as well as I lecture in the pharmaceutical product development department within arts and sciences, and periodically lecture in epidemiology, one of my areas of interest. I have a master's degree in actually toxicology from the University of Ottawa, and an MBA from Canada's best business school, the Ivy School of Business, and from the University of Western Ontario. Okay. So these days I spend my operating time primarily on Prometrics and Fast Gym, and have a lot of fun, lots and lots of fun. The day is full of fun and enjoyment. I thought I would just mention very quickly, without giving too much information on any one, but just to give you a feeling for the area of activity that I've had over the years. College Pro Painters was the very first venture of mine. As a student in the MBA program in Canada at the University of Western Ontario, I sat beside a gentleman who was very keen on starting a summertime painting business. And I had no experience whatsoever. I wanted to start in painting. My interest was, and my dream was to start a biotechnology company. But, as it were, and we'll see a little bit later on, that connections and networking and opportunities have to be evaluated on their face value and how they support your particular goals and objectives. And turns out that between my first and second year in the MBA program, I started up and helped navigate the College for Painter franchise system, which eventually became, not under my direction, because I sold my interests to my brother only after a couple of years, but eventually became the largest single residential repainting company in the world. I actually went on, after the success in College for Painters, to become a president of a consulting company in Europe called Robert S. First that assisted the introduction of product for biotechnology companies. And we'll see in a couple of minutes about what happens when you have problems and issues and how they become opportunities. But it gave me the opportunity, a significant challenge at Robert First, to start my own unique, with 100% ownership, Duey research with offices on 5 continents and serving biotechnology and pharmaceutical companies as well as medical device companies in their quest to launch products on the international scene. I then wanted to do some diversification. One of the problems with entrepreneurs is that we have an interest that is varied, and we tend to often get unfocused, and so guilty as charged. I started a real estate company called Commonwealth Properties and started buying property and selling the construction of homes and doing developments. And that was used and made a good playing ground for some of the other skill sets that I wanted to develop. There came a time when I was spending about half of my day looking for new opportunities, and at one point in time ran across the president of a company called Health Outcomes Technologies that had some challenges, and I promoted and suggested some specific solutions to some of those issues, and it was only within a couple of months I offered to work for president of that firm at no compensation, and after about 3 months, less than 100 days, was able to take over the management and running of that firm, which eventually became a significant entity in high technology analytics for the pharmaceutical industry, which permitted me and suggested strongly that I start another company focusing uniquely on the pharmaceutical industry and large databases. And that's where I started Prometrics, Inc. 16 years ago. We've now served over 120 pharmaceutical clients, and as I mentioned earlier, about 6,000 projects. Because of that success, I started an incubator, and I'm just going to mention a couple of companies here. Phoenix Datacom, a firm dedicated to the electronic data transfer of information. It's the kind of technology used today a lot by Walmart for effectively managing the logistics and supply chain. In other words, giving an IP address to everything there is out there so you can track it on the internet, whether it be a shipment or an individual product, so that you can walk in, for example, to a warehouse and know electronically with a sensor how much inventory is there by individual SKU. DrQuality.com is a company that was focused on using data, which is the main currency and main asset that I tend to focus on in companies, and to use that information to rate physicians. Today, the asset DrQuality.com is part of Healthgrades, which is the largest single healthcare rating agency today. I also was involved with an organization or company called Wired Vines, which we'll see was a failure, which I had to close down and helped close down. That was an early entry, very early entry. We're talking about over 10 years ago as a early social networking site. Integrated Health Services, I've already mentioned a little bit, and of course Fast Gym, talked about a little bit already. Okay, now let's have some fun. Why become an entrepreneur? Why do someone want to become an entrepreneur? Why do you want to become an entrepreneur? Ask yourself this question, and regardless of whether it's yes or no, spend some time going a little bit deeper. If you're a business student, if you're a student of life, in other words, in the United States of America, everybody should be considering entrepreneurship as an option. If not early in your career, if not in the middle of your career, before you turn the lights off, consider being an entrepreneur, because it is a wonderful, wonderful life. Okay. Entrepreneurs, true entrepreneurs anyway, are in the business of starting businesses. And that has implications. One of the reasons that I'm in the United States, I'm actually Canadian, one of the reasons I'm in the United States is the philosophy that I found so inviting in the United States compared to Canada. Now, Canada is a wonderful country, beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful natural resources. But I'll give you something that might be new or slightly intriguing to some of you. Canadians, or at least Canada, the country, is based on what's called a founding charter. Okay, in the United States we have the Declaration of Independence. And that founding charter talks about three things. Okay, it talks about peace, order, and good government, which makes it sound like a great place to live. And it is. But in the United States, we have the Declaration of Independence, and it talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness. We get the opportunity, all of us, to define what that happiness is. And also, because we have freedom, we are able to secure and pursue that pathway ourselves. Entrepreneurship is the penultimate position for pursuing happiness. Now, some of you that want to be entrepreneurs are in business school. And rule number one, entrepreneurship, at least the hardest part of business and being an entrepreneur, has nothing to do with business. It's not the business part. That's hard. Okay? It's the X factor, not the television X factor, but humans. Okay? Humans. We have misunderstandings. When people are working for you, okay, there's absenteeism. There's selfish agendas. There's ego clashes. There's personal business on company time. There's all kinds of things, okay, that are the real crux and problems that you don't see anywhere in a business plan that are going to make or break the success of your business. I suggest a book that is widely read by many, many executives, but not often talked about in business schools currently, maybe because the professors are afraid, I can't show a book from 1985. The guys are going to get annoyed at me. There's a book called Six Thinking Hats by Edward de Bono. And in it, he talks about the 6 kinds of ways that people think. Okay? There are 6 colors of hat: a white, a red, a black, a yellow, a green, and a blue. And I wanted to just give you a bit of a flavor because I want you to close your eyes as I'm saying these different colors and explain the kinds of thinking associated with these colored hats. And think about whether you're a black hat, a blue hat. And also think about your best friend, boyfriend, girlfriend. What kind of person are they? And I'll then say and tell you the importance of assessing and understanding this when it comes to being an entrepreneur. White hats, they're neutral, objective. They're concerned with facts and figures. Think of doctors. Think of scientists. Red hat, the emotional view. People that wear their emotions on their sleeves. Okay. The black hat, careful, cautious, always the devil's advocate. Right. The person that says, when you say, let's all go to the movies, they all say, yeah, but what about the gas? What about the time? What about getting back? What about et cetera, et cetera? The yellow hat, the sunny and positive person. They're the optimists. The blue hat, cool, the color of the sky. Above everything else, the organizing hat. Okay? Often people that you see in corporations, organizing and running divisions. There's one more hat. The green hat. It's associated with fertile growth, creativity, and new ideas. And I don't think it's coincidence that, one, it's green. Two, I have a farm with 60 acres and spend a lot of time growing a little over 100 different kinds of vegetables because growth is invigorating. Green and movement from point A to point B is very, very both intriguing and stimulating. So think about it. Well, I can tell you, the X factor is the hardest part. Working with people, developing teams, motivating, accomplishing your goals through other people, all right, is a primordial need and a factor that you have to decide, what color hat do I have? And can I get people around me, okay, that are going to be easy enough to read that I can get them to come on board and for me to understand what it is that it takes, what will it take to get them to believe in my dream as well, because you can't do things alone. Okay. The other thing is that entrepreneurs are dealers, but people think it's about money. People think it's about wheeling and dealing with contracts. But the lawyers only come later. Okay. The accountants need some beans to count. Okay. The entrepreneur is the one that's going to generate, okay, the beans to count, generate the need for the lawyers to come in to do the wording of a contract. Entrepreneurs are the ones that sit down, often quietly, often alone, and think about where things must go in the future and deal with hope. Okay? And that means other people's dreams. And so one of the things you want to do is look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, do you like what you see? Because guess what? Entrepreneurs are constantly looking inward, constantly concerned about whether they're good enough, whether their ideas are going to make it, whether they're going to be able to get the people and the resources and marshal everything that's necessary. And so you need a lot of confidence. So you better be looking at yourself and saying, I like you. All right? Not being cocky, not being overconfident. Don't worry. The reality of the world will cut you down many, many times. That shouldn't be a problem. But you do have to have a lot of confidence. Okay. Let's talk about motivations. Okay. Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? You want a lot of money. Well, I've always wanted a lot of money too. And a lot of people like a lot of things. But if that's the fundamental reason to become an entrepreneur, then I suggest you might be barking up the wrong tree. Okay? Because if you just want money and you want a high probability of that money, in other words, some security, then maybe becoming a doctor, lawyer, accountant, or some other profession, worthy profession, by the way, might be in your future. But if you're concerned and interested in independence, if you're really interested in satisfaction, which whatever that might be, whether you want to do green things in your life, okay, in terms of helping the environment, whether you want to affect social change, whether you want to feel really good because you're driving a bunch of nice fast cars, whatever it might be, whatever your definition of satisfaction is, having a big family, all right, then, and having control over that, all right, so that you, once you've defined what satisfaction is, can secure, one, pursue, and then eventually secure a quality of life that is extremely rewarding, then maybe you might be material for entrepreneurship. You have to always be a student because you're studying all the time. I'm still a student. I'm studying constantly, not just actually informally, but also, in my case, formally as well. Now, why do you want to study? Too many people have done the things that you want to do. Okay? Your ideas, your concepts. It's been done before many, many, many times, often. And therefore, you have to study to make sure you're not wasting your time. You also want to live the moment. Boy, oh boy, every day I get up and there's just so much to do, so much fun, so much challenge that it's amazing. And I'm very grateful for, quote, my profession, entrepreneurship. And then you need to plan the future. Sit down and make sure that you are constantly, and by the way, planning is a daily activity, and I'll address that in a bit more detail. The game, the other thing, you know why it's fun? Because it is a game. The whole thing's a game. The game of capitalism. The game of free enterprise. It's the style. Okay? Now, I know some of you know what that means. But the capitalist system is much more than what we typically think about in terms of economic capital. All right? What we're talking about, in addition to economic capital, is a need to understand, appreciate, and maneuver the other types of capital that are central to the entrepreneurial lifestyle. Human capital. You need to get people around you that are better, braver, and brainier than you. Intellectual capital. There are things that you're going to do, that you're going to invest in, that are special and are sometimes unique. In that case, you need to go and protect them with intellectual property. There's social capital. We've seen now changes in North Africa in this just the last couple of months as a result of the emergence of and great exploitation of social networking and social media. In the entrepreneurial world, the last 25 years of my life have been, in part, a subtitle, social networking. Social networking, constantly. Developing connections that, while not obvious at the moment of the connection of its value to your future and your endeavor and your exploitation of some concept, become at some point in time in the future, some of them, a small subset of them, instrumental in developing your future plans. And then today, brand equity or brand capital. If you're going to do a business, start right away. You're building a brand. And if time permits, we'll talk a little bit about what that means. Okay. Yeah, you hear all the time, right? Cash is king. Well, cash is king for your business. It better not be king for you. All right? Because you have to give up your cash constantly. Because you have got to put your business and your ideas ahead of yourself. You have to sacrifice. The other thing, too, is that people are often worried and concerned and study a lot, accounting, fixed costs, variable costs, analysis. All right? While it's good to have an analytical mind, in fact, really good to have an analytical mind, all right? Be careful of what you're analyzing. Because remember, for entrepreneurs, real entrepreneurs, we all eventually realize something. And that is at all costs. All right? The accounting professor's going to come smack me here. All costs are variable. Yep. In the long run, all costs are variable. And for the entrepreneur, they become the long term sometimes comes up really fast when you have to make some decisions and let go of a lot of what might be considered fixed costs. Okay. One of the things that, as an entrepreneur, you have to feel real comfortable with, all right, is establishing goals. A lot of people can't make decisions and have a hard time establishing a goal and sometimes let other people, whether it be parents, peers, boyfriends, girlfriends, spouses, make decisions for them that are specific to their goal in the future. You have got to crave a goal. You have to also enjoy the process. You have to also recognize the value of goals because the goal itself is meaningless, okay? It's not what they are, but it's what they do for you. What does a goal do? I made a little note to myself here. Goals. Think about it. A goal gives you purpose. And for me, day in and day out, that purpose translates to energy. Translate to energy. Personal energy. Also, a goal provides you with some self-motivation. Okay? Especially if you've got bought into that idea, bought into that goal. That's self-motivation, okay, coupled with energy, provides you something that is indispensable. You better have it. It's called discipline. If you don't have discipline, if you're sloppy, you're going to run a sloppy business, all right? If you're disciplined, you'll have a disciplined business, and the probability of success ramps up very, very significantly. Take no. By the way, all entrepreneurs, a little bit like salespeople, right? You have to take no as a question, not an answer. You ask somebody a question. Their answer is no. That is a question. What is the question? The question is, how can I be more creative? How can I be more creative? There came a day once when at the fledgling start of Prometrics where I dare say I had no clients. It goes back a while. I couldn't even afford a computer when I started that particular company, and I had an IBM Selectric typewriter, nice little ball flipping around, a lot of white paper, making a lot of mistakes. And I wanted to start a proposal. I wanted to write something for a big company. I was giving a speech one day at a podium, and along that podium also was the president of Ortho McNeil, who I was really happy because I knew at lunchtime I'd be sitting down around a little round table, and I would wait and sit right beside him and try to sell him everything I could. All my ideas for analytics, all my ideas to analyze pharmaceutical prescriptions. And for the first 20 minutes at lunchtime, I tried hard. I was selling hard, everything I could, all my ideas, all my thoughts. By the way, in retrospect, of course, I was talking to him about features of our analytical data mining, for example. Well, he said, no. And luckily, kind of came natural. I asked myself, he's not buying anything. I got to think of something. And I talked to him about his pain. And he finally opened up and said, I got a problem. I've got 12 regional business directors running $300, $400 million businesses all around the country. And they're all former sales reps. They don't have business backgrounds. They don't know what the impact of discounting is. They don't know what a P&L really looks like. They're always worried about the top line. I would love a method to deliver a P&L, but I can't do that because I've got 60,000 products. I got tons of things that go moving parts out there, and we don't have a cash register because we sell to wholesalers, okay? And we don't get to see what's happening at a pharmacy. And I told him, I can figure it out. I'll build you P&Ls. I took a napkin, and in the back of that napkin drew out a solution to his problem, a solution that I'd never built before, but as a way to build a profit and loss statement for every zip code in the country. He loved it. Woo! I got myself a proposal, which he eventually signed and became one of over 1,000 projects with J&J companies. Problems are always gifts. Okay? Open them because each has a gift inside. Prometrics actually started because of a problem. I was the president of a company and partial owner of a company called Health Outcomes Technologies. And we had significant issues with regard to how to manage growth. And one of the growth patterns was investing heavily in technology and computers. In that case, in that particular time, IVR technology, integrated voice response technology for doing clinical trials, versus serving the needs of pharmaceutical companies with data that was being collected by third parties. And that problem became such an important problem that it begat a significant solution, the creation of a new company, which I was able to control and changed my life in a significant way because that company became extremely profitable. Let's take a quick little view of the historical perspective on entrepreneurship. You know, if you go back to the turn of the century, not this century, the one before, right? If you want to be an entrepreneur, you wanted to actually get involved with industrial production. You wanted to make something, whether it be cotton-based or, like Henry Ford, build a car, assemble something. So if you had a factory, you were one awesome entrepreneur, all right? And so now, then at that point, for a period of time, that was the name of the game. So you can go to Lycoming College in the middle of this state of Pennsylvania, and you'll see a road with big mansions. And they were the people that understood that if you cut a tree down and you do something with that wood and had a little factory to do something with it, you'd become a very successful entrepreneur. And you see things like that city after city that are the major cities of the turn of the century and early 1900s. If you wanted, though, to have another factory, what do you think the limitation was? Access to capital. So entrepreneurs became those people, okay, that were able to secure capital. Bankers, big bankers, became successful, and people that amassed capital were the ones able to start businesses more easily. Well, you know, in the post-World War II, entrepreneurs found that having money wasn't quite as important or as good as having the idea. And there, protecting the idea became important. And so for many years, you know, one pursued intellectual capital and protecting it at the U.S. Patent Office. Today, though, you know something? I look at a lot of business plans, and they're talking about intellectual property, and they've applied for a patent. And I look at it, and it's a great idea. But I've already seen business plans with ideas, so they're going to beat that idea. And so having a patent and worrying about whether it's good for X amount of years or not is much less important than understanding where the market's moving, because a patent is quite useless if the other idea is better than your patent. And therefore, what's happening today, for the most part, is branding, and brand equity, and people walking up to a product and recognizing immediately the brand. And therefore, for example, having intellectual property around an iPad 2 may not be so important as, in fact, knowing the little I in front of the iPad 2, which tells you a whole bunch about Steve Jobs and tells you a whole bunch about the company, the resources, the design, and the commitment to that product and future generations. Any company that's trying to copy iPad 2 today in an Asian country, for example, all right, is probably wasting their time, okay? Because you can be darn sure Steve and his teammates are going to come out before they're able to reach the market with something even better. And the consistency is the brand, and the brand image, and the meaning of the brand. Okay, let's talk about getting started. How do you get started? I get that question all the time. Where do I get off? How do I get off the dime? Where do I go to get going? Okay. Well, I suggest that you have a personal notebook. You know, some people have little black books. Some people have a big library of MP3s. Entrepreneurs need to have a notebook of ideas. Okay? You need to be constantly writing down ideas. You're looking for sore points, pain points, issues. People are all something. You know, someone mentioned, I think, at the turn of the century, that haven't we invented everything already? Okay? I don't think so. Okay? There's things constantly that are not correct, not the way they could and should be. Lots and lots of opportunities. So you generate a lot of ideas. And a lot of you are going to say, yeah, I got a lot of ideas. I think most of them are crappy. And guess what? You're just like me. You're just like all other entrepreneurs. All right? Assume. So why don't you just make the assumption? Your ideas aren't so good. A lot of them are wrong. Probably mostly on the details, by the way. You might have some kernel of genius in there. And so the trick to good entrepreneurship, small ego. Truly, small ego. Let your idea grow. Because if your ego is bigger than the idea is going to be constrained and have difficulty getting out of the shell. All right? So you surround yourself with those that are better, braver, and brainier than you are. Makes it a lot more comfortable, by the way. You can sleep at night knowing that people that are doing your stuff are better than you. Okay? All right. Getting started. Continuing here. Pareto's rule for entrepreneurs. Many of you have studied at least the 80-20 rule. You may not know that it was an Italian economist in 1906 that came up with an economic principle based on land ownership in Italy that, hey, 20% of the people in a town in Italy owned 80% of the land. Well, I'll get to the pain one in a second. Only 20% of your ideas are good. All right? That's a general rule. You need a lot of ideas. 20% are wrong, are not so good. Okay? But 20% of them are good, rather, and generate 8% of your success. 4 to 5 your ideas, okay, use up resources. So you've got to be good at learning to stop. Okay? When to no longer pursue is very important. Lou Gerstner, the former CEO of IBM, and author of a book called Elephants Can Dance, okay, turned around IBM, a huge behemoth. And today, actually just last week, Wall Street Journal, celebrating their 100th year of success. Okay? I talked to him once for about 15 minutes at a book signing. And I asked him, okay, one thing, what should I tell my MBA students? And he said the word no. I was given so many ideas on how to save IBM, so many interesting technologies, so many avenues for possible new business endeavor. And I said no to 9 out of 10 of them. Kept cash and focused on key and important ones, put our bets down, essentially, and he was able to turn IBM around and saved it. At one point in time, IBM, one of the largest corporations on this globe, was running out of cash in 7 days, and he was able to turn that around. So how do you get a good idea? Well, try out lots of ideas, okay? Don't worry about any one idea. Try a lot, okay? And pain is the greatest teacher. Try your ideas, and sometimes you'll get hurt. You get some pain. I did a project once. I was asked to build a system. I built this huge system for J&J. We built profit and loss statements for 47,000 zip codes that could be updated on a weekly basis for all of J&J products. It was pretty amazing. Huge database. Hoffman Morose found out we did that. And they came over and said, we want you to build it for us. And I obviously said yes. They're paying twice as much as J&J. But they started putting in new and obviously different requirements into the process. And I kept on coming up with great ideas to address them. But remember, a lot of ideas aren't so good. I was assuming that I was better than 20% good ideas, when in fact I was probably somewhere around 20%, and was building up a large project, multi-million-dollar project, based on some solution sets that wouldn't work. And I ended up having a lot of pain for many, many months, trying to solve some issues, which I actually generated myself. And so I then learned to really cut my bad ideas a lot faster, because I probably lost $200,000-$300,000 on one of my projects with Roche. Decisions. Okay. A lot of you are wondering, okay, there's so many possibilities. Oh, I can do a Dairy Queen. I could, start building a little widget. Oh, there's so many things I could possibly do. Well, ask yourself, okay, ask yourself, what kind of person are you? Okay? Are you a service or a product type person? And that's, by the way, for each individual decision, and that'll change over time as you build up experience and as you build up capability. Remember something. My first business was a residential painting business. And it grew pretty big. Made lots of money. I was lucky. The first business, first summer, made over $100,000. And so that really starts you off good. Don't worry, I lost it pretty fast, but starts you off real good. You realize I ain't going to work for anybody. Okay? It was a service, and one of the calculations that I did, because I was told in class doing my MBA, let's figure out some ratios. One of them is break-even point. And at the end of this lecture or talk, I will tell you to try to forget some of those ratios. Because the ratio on a service business was half of the sash. A sash is the part that's around a window. The break-even point's half of a window. Because there is no capital required. Okay? They're paying for the paint, all right? The paintbrush doesn't cost much money. It doesn't matter what clothes you're wearing, old or new, they're going to be old real fast. All right? So this break-even point is real small. The key thing, of course, in the service business is that capital requirements are very small. And so for those of you that don't come from a rich family, for those of you that aren't endowed with a bank account of some significance, you're probably moving towards service, whether you like it or not. And it's fine, by the way. Fine and dandy to start with a service type business. Product businesses often require capital, sometimes too much capital, in which case you often require the investment of angels for first rounds, early rounds, and then sometimes additional investment in second and third rounds to, once past proof of concept, to get to a point of actual production. In the process, your control becomes at stake. So let's go to the next one, control, high versus low. Remember something, as an entrepreneur, you eventually want control. Because quality of life, comes with independence and making choices and having flexibility. And so, you'll eventually want control. So the question is, how much am I willing to give up in control, all right, in the early stages of activities? And entrepreneurs, by the way, hopefully have a whole bunch of plays at the plate. You know, even Steve Jobs, all right, his next computer wasn't exactly all that successful. You know, IBM had the OS/2 operating system, was not successful. We all have successes and failures. The control aspect, in my opinion, should be controlled judiciously. And I suggest starting a service business first. And also, since you might not be all that knowledgeable about the service to start with, giving up some control and learning from other people's service experience often makes a lot of sense. Okay? Now, large versus small. A lot of people think, I don't want to be a small little businessman. Well, there's nothing wrong with being a small little businessman if you're successful. I can tell you, I know a lot of unsuccessful big businessmen that would sure wish they had a successful small business. The other thing, too, is that what is small? I mean, depending on your perspective, you know, I think it's fair to say that I service in my various companies large businesses. And I work in large business. I visit them. And I'm real happy that I'm not in a large business where a lot of the time is spent in meetings, which, in my opinion, is a lot of wasted time. They, of course, feel that they have to have those meetings for building consensus and other factors. But small versus large. In a small company, you can control things, manage things, and also appreciate the impact that you're having in that environment. Also, it takes a long time to get a large business to a large size. So in the business school, one of the cases I do is the Snapple case. It took them over a decade before they reached $5 million in sales. What are some of the ingredients for success, folks? Keys: hard work, quick study, adapt to change. Oh, yeah. Ethical behavior. Turns out that if you don't do things right, guess what? People know about it. And you'll end up finding that people don't want to deal with you. And you end up being restricted to dealing with a bunch of people of like behavior. And in the long run, it just doesn't work. Okay? Getting into your groove. At some point in time, somewhere along the line, you're going to be doing some work, working real hard, and all of a sudden, it happened to me, it's happened to other entrepreneurs, you find that it ain't work anymore. It's not work. It's too much fun. And then those 18-hour days are moving very, very quickly, and there's smiles, both at the start of the day, in the middle of the day, and at the end of the day. One of the goals to get into your groove is to look at things from a project perspective. Projects have starts and a goal, they have ends, and you look at their ROI, and they are elements that can be looked at individually. In fact, all your entrepreneurial activity and your businesses are all about a whole bunch of projects. And that way you can tell about which things were good, which things worked, which things didn't, and you can make and use that for progress. Tasks. You assign people and have accountability. Your network. I talked about connectors. Personal connections develop opportunities. And I addressed Health Outcome Technologies example. Okay, growing your enterprise. Simplicity of the entrepreneurial life. Motivate your team, okay? You don't really need money. People think you need a lot of money to pay people a lot of money. The nice thing about entrepreneurship, because you're a dealer of hope, is that you actually can get people to do a lot of stuff for you, tons of stuff, without spending a lot of money. It's wonderful. It's amazing. One of the principles is CAT, complex assignments. Give people tough assignments, all right? But give them autonomy. Let them be their own little entrepreneur, in a sense, within their task set, and have a tie between their reward and their effort. So even small efforts get small, can have rewards. And for those that are really giving significant effort, give them some appropriate rewards. Communications. You have to decide, an entrepreneur has to decide, depending on the color of the hat that you're looking at and dealing with, whether you're commanding and telling people what to do, whether you need to spend time developing consensus, or whether you need to be in the consultation mode. Okay, a number of years back, I spent a little over an hour with Bill Gates in Redmond, Washington. And he wasn't commanding. Okay, he wasn't developing consensus. He was talking to a group of us that were healthcare consultants to pharmaceutical companies. He was consulting. He was asking us questions, trying to learn from us. And sure enough, a couple of years later, awesome products emerged in a horizontal format for us to use to develop vertical niches, which is what one of the things Prometrics does for a living these days with the SQL Server database. Dealing with information overload. Some people say, how do you deal with all this information? Well, it is actually pretty simple. 5 Ds. You have to be action-oriented. If it's something that you can do and can get done, do it. Do it and get it done. If not, delegate it. Get it to the people, okay, that can manage and do it for you, or immediately decide, I'm ditching it. It's being ditched. I'm not handling it. I'm ditching this thing. Or you defer it. And if you defer it, you've got to document. The nice thing, in the old days, I used to write things down all the time. I still do to some degree, but today, with Google Docs, you can just document things electronically, search them, find them quickly, and so that you're never repeating anything. Okay, key decision points. Another bus is coming. I'm going to try to wrap up quickly now. There's always opportunities, so don't worry about the opportunity that you're looking at right now. There's always another one coming down. You can survive not signing a great player, but you might not survive signing the one at the wrong price. You get into something and you're over your head, you'll regret it for a long time. When to market? All the time. The key connections that you make today will reap rewards later, and you have no idea which ones those are. Okay? It's like a garden. You got to plant, and it takes a lot of time sometimes for them to come out. Don't compete with existing markets. Anticipate new ones. In other words, find where people are not happy. That is where there is opportunity. Okay? Wayne Gretzky, I skate where the puck is going to be, not where it's been. And I know, Monica, you like that one. It's in one of your slides. I don't know if you attributed it to Wayne or not, but I skated once with Wayne many years ago. He was much, much better. And sure enough, yeah, it looked like he could do that. So keeping the score, balanced scorecard for the deal maker. Okay, it's interesting. I was at a talk not that long ago by Janus Funds. They are market makers, and they were promoting this thing called Ironman. I was interested because I own a gym, and they're basically saying that many people that are doing extremely well in their careers and making $250,000, $300,000 a year have horrible, horrible personal lifestyles, and their health is not so good. And they were suggesting techniques, including this band that they handed out to everybody to be able to do some exercises while traveling. Well, that's because many of us, especially as successful entrepreneurs, are unbalanced. So I suggest that you immediately, today, right now, decide what your family values are, what your financial goals and career goals are, what your spiritual dimensionality is, and how you want that to develop over time, and health. And work on all 4 of them at the same time, balancing them. So your stool, if you will, is always solid. That planning cycle, you plan every week, every month, every quarter, every year, 3-year, 5-year, 10 years, and you look at these things constantly, constantly. So that at the end of the week, you decide whether your month plan needs to change and what behaviors you need to change yourself to be more effective. The metrics, now just to close up, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. At College Pro Painters, we determined that by measuring and telling people and showing people how well they painted, and I do this in Prometrics now, Prometrics is called professional measurement, okay, we were able to become extremely successful and move someone from 45 minutes to doing a garage door down to 8 minutes. And we paid them on piece rate, by the way, not per hour. So some people were making 3 and 4 times their hourly wage of others. Forget about the textbook ratios. Be creative, create your own metrics to fit your objectives, and help manage the behaviors needed to achieve your goal. So at Prometrics today, we have accountants and bookkeepers and stuff, but I manage the business, the entire business, on one page. Okay, a dashboard that allows me to really get a feeling for where we are at any one point in time. I want to thank you for your time and wish all of those of you that are anticipating or planning or considering entrepreneurship good luck. Go for the gusto. Thanks. Okay. I have a couple quick questions here. Looks like I have 4. What was the biggest challenge you faced in starting your first business? That's an easy question. Realizing that I'm not very smart. Realizing that I need other people. At the time I started my first business, I was already in MBA school and the best school in Canada, and all of us had big, huge heads. Okay, thought we were God's gift to the business world. Okay, and many of my classmates are extremely successful today, and some of them in my class were already somewhat successful, and many of them had parents that were very successful. The biggest challenge to me was getting into the field and actually working and actually trying to get things to work and seeing that they were failing right and left. So think of it, a lot of people here have started college works and do some painting. It's now been repeated and copied many times. But at the time, it was the first. We were the first people trying to get students to paint houses. Students that had no experience to paint houses. I had no experience painting houses. We developed a method, and it just wasn't working. I was working my butt off and working from early morning to late night. I was about to give up, and I was told, try another thing. No, I'm going to try one more thing. Okay, what am I going to try? And the idea was to go and sell, not alone, but with somebody, okay, of a different gender, somebody that would assist in allowing a young couple that owned a house to make a decision favorably. And what happened was that it increased the credibility substantially, because that was their biggest issue. Why would I give a kid, okay, the keys to my house, in a sense, to paint my house and maybe make a mess of it? And that credibility factor increased my closing rate from 30-40% well into 75%. Okay, it more than doubled my closing rate, which gave me the ability to grow. Then my next challenge was, oh my God, I don't know how to manage people, because the people were not very happy with me, because I was both, while paying them and giving them work, I was critical, too critical, of their performance. So I simply stepped back and realized that I need metrics. Instead of paying them on piece rate, what I did was introduce a new metric, which was, I'm going to ask the owner of the house to rate your job on a scale of 10. And if they rate it 10 on 10, then I'm going to take the 10 and multiply it by your pay rate. But if it's 9 on 10, you're only getting paid 90%. If it's 8 on 10, you're only getting 80% of your pay. Obviously, paycheck starts hurting at around 70% of your paycheck. And so you'll have to make a decision whether you leave because your quality's not good enough. I won't have to fire you. You'll probably fire yourself. So in other words, getting started is tough because you have a feeling that you know how to do it, and when in fact you don't. Question number 2, how do you manage the details of multiple businesses? Okay. Remember that, the 4 Ds? Actually 5 Ds. If something's really small and it's within my capability, I can do it in less than 5 minutes, you do it. Other than that, I'm not doing it. I'm simply not doing it. Therefore, I have to delegate it. I'm going to delegate it. I know who my people are, so I pick the person, I delegate, I assign accountability. Period. Now, what if I don't have anyone to delegate it to? Even that it's not within their scope. I have no choice. I'm going to defer it. If it's important, I'm going to defer it. Now, as soon as I defer, I have got to document. When is it being deferred to? When is it coming back up into my face? And at that time, I'll decide to do it, or delegate it, or possibly defer it again. But it's documented. Nothing slipping through the cracks. And the most important one, which is the biggest one of all, is ditch it. Okay? You ditch the thing. Decide up front, this is not happening. And tell the whole world, by the way. If they tell them, so no one has expectations. We're not dealing with that. It's not in our scope. Thank you very much. Life becomes so much simpler. Now, how do you decide? Make those decisions? They're all related to your goal. If you have goals and objectives, pay homage to those, and these 5 Ds become really quick and easy. Really quick and easy. Question number 3, what do you look for in the business in which you invest? Wow. Okay. That's a good question. I like businesses that are related to biology and life and health. And I like businesses that are data related because I have competencies there. That's what attracts me to the business plan. But when it comes to investing, it's so much simpler. You invest in people, not in product, not in solutions. There isn't any doubt that the idea part is only around 2% of the business. All right, 98%, as Edison said, 2% inspiration, 98% perspiration. So if you're going to be investing in someone's sweat, I want to know that that guy sweats nice and clean. I want him to be honest, her to be very, very vested in the idea, focused, and 100% into it, if not 110%. So I'm looking for people's attitudes. That's why I invest in a business. And a number of students have come to me. We've invested in businesses. The gym, for example, is a student-run business, in fact. And the student that started it is on the managing board. Number 4, last question. You mentioned human capital and surrounding yourself with people who are smarter, braver, better than you. How do you find the people, and how do you select people you can trust? Excellent question. Excellent question. because entrepreneurs are successful because of who they put around themselves. No doubt about it. One thing you do is you undertake activities that are self-selecting for the kinds of people that you want to attract. And so I'll give you an example. I teach at a university. And so bright people from the university, not people, by the way, with high GPAs. I'm talking about bright people that understand the world and understand how it operates and can see the difference between how we live today and how we might live in the future. And then in talking to people and giving them some challenges. You only, by the way, find out, talking is quite meaningless. You only find out what someone's character is by giving them a challenge. And so I always look for the first obstacles of anyone's activity with me, because that's when for example, I'll give you a good example. If I'm talking to somebody and they might be asking for a little bit of even personal guidance on something, and they have a boyfriend, and sometimes I use this in my own family. I'm not that interested in finding out what movies you went to or what the plans are for the future. I want to know what happened in the first argument, how did it go down, what were the options, and how did the decision or resolution come about? Because only there can you see how people make decisions. It's because here's the important thing: it's not how people act when you're in front of them; it's how they act when you're not around. Because entrepreneurs are not around. I'm not around. People always say, "When's the next time Mr. Dewey's going to be around?" Might not be for a while until I come around. I like Steven Star Restaurants downtown, and he's got 15 nice restaurants in Philadelphia, maybe 16 by now. And when I was at Morimoto, who's the chef of the restaurant named by him, which is now world famous, and he has a beautiful book there. And I asked the receptionist, "When's the next time Mr. Morimoto will be here? Maybe you could sign this book, gorgeous book." "Oh, maybe in 2 months." Okay, so it's not that often that he's actually at his flagship restaurant. He's too busy at the next and the next. But let me tell you something. You look around that restaurant. It clicks. It operates like clockwork, very, very effectively and efficiently. So pick people that you feel real comfortable with. That's very important. There's reasons why. When you look at the movies that are filmed, Woody Allen movies always have the same people in them. Other movies, Clint Eastwood works with the same people often. It's because they are comfortable and they trust those people. Okay. If that's it, I will let you know that my email address is mduey@wcupa.edu. So it's mduey. And if you have any further questions, thoughts, interests, business plans, or seeking some advice, feel free to send me an email, and I'll be happy to oblige. Monica, thank you very much for the opportunity, and good luck to everybody.